Thank you for joining us today on Christ Family Daily. My name is Owen, and this is my wife, Tori. Christ Family Daily is our podcast where you and I get to know God better through His Word. Throughout this podcast, we want to answer some of your questions as well. We love to hear from you. In fact, this is Christ's family. That's who we are, so we want to be together as a family. That's why we do this as often as we can in our living room, talking to you as our family. And if you are encouraged by anything, if the Holy Spirit does, just speak any of the words we share to you. Feel free to leave a like, share, or comment below, and let's get into it.
You know, we've been talking recently a lot about life, about Jesus, obviously, about His image, about our identity. And those are all really great things, fundamental things. I hope they're things you're starting to be familiar with, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, something I want to talk about today is, I believe, kind of the next step. When you know your identity, then there's a next step that you take.
Right.
And it's so important. And of course, if you're not familiar with the identity, with life, with what we have been talking about, you know, we were made in the image of God. From the very beginning, God said, let us, Him, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, make man in our image.
Amen.
And God made us in His image, in His exact image. You go through Genesis, I just think it's beautiful because God sets this up so well. If each animal was made after its own kind, each tree, each plant was made after its own kind, but we were made after God's kind. We were directly from Him.
Right.
Exactly like our root, our core, it originates in Him, right? And what is Him, right? You need to know, okay, if my identity is in Him, if I'm made in His image, what is His image? And there's so many different things. We could talk about the character of God all day long, but God says the most important is love. That without love, you are nothing. And He says all throughout the scriptures that He is love.
Right.
That love is the priority. And so one of the most important things in knowing the identity and character of the Father is that He is love. And we were made in that image of love.
Right.
You know, it's so important to stop here, to take time here. Because like I said, Paul talks about if you don't have love, you have nothing. You can be moving mountains with a word. You can be dying for your brother. You can be giving everything you have to the poor, but it means nothing if it's not from love.
Right.
You know, God is love. So if we're doing something that's not in love, we're doing something that's not in God. We're doing something that's separate from Him. It's death. It's, you know, an expression that we always grew up hearing, not in the church, but in where we grew up in Bible college, was if you're not going forward, you're going backwards. There is not a middle ground in the kingdom of God. So if you're not acting in love, you are acting in death. And that's why it's so important that we take the time to understand God's identity of love and how, because He is the image of love, we also are the image of love. So I want to go ahead. I want to stop here first in 1 Corinthians 13. We're going to, you know, the world has an understanding of what love looks like, but we cannot go by the world's understanding of things. The world's understanding of things will fail you time and time again. And truly, I think if you found yourself comparing the world's standard of love to God's standard of love, to the Bible's standard of love, there are so many key things that are different. And I think ultimately you would find that love, the way that the world defines it, it's confused. It's not the agape love that we know, that we know that God is.
Just if you know, or you're hearing these things and you realize maybe I don't know as much about who I am, as much about love as I should. We do have, you know, 2 series on our channel, one about grafting, one about your identity, about being made in the image of God. But we also have a What is Love series. So if love is something that you recognize, maybe I don't understand God's meaning of love. As we go throughout this episode today and you want to know more about it, you can go find that What is Love series on our YouTube channel.
Amen. So 1 Corinthians 13. Let's go ahead and start in verse 4. It says, "Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails." You know, I love, if you break down like the Amplified Classic of this and you really just take your time to study this, we need to know what God says love is. We need to, because it's who He says He is, right? And that's why there's so many reasons why this is so important. But, I want you to meditate on this, to break it down. No, love thinks no evil. It is never thinking, well, that person probably did this because of that bad thing, or they really had this heart motive, and I can't believe that person cut me off. They were just doing that to be mean. That's thinking evil, right? And I know that's something we have all been guilty of at one point of time or another.
Mhm.
But that's why we have to be aware of this. Paul, and this, okay, let me say this before I get into that. It is not a condemnation to compare ourselves to the Bible. It is actually freedom to say, this is what I'm supposed to look like. And it's not a condemnation to say, this is what love is, this is where I am. Mm-hmm. It's actually freedom to grow. It's saying, this is what love is, and this is where I know I'm going, right? And there's a mindset change. You definitely can compare yourself to the word in condemnation, but it's a heart change. You have to have that heart change, right, of saying, I'm not comparing myself against this, I'm comparing it to me. If I know this is where I'm going, I know this is what I'm supposed to look like, I know this is what I can look like, right? Mm-hmm. And so I am not saying, man, we need to just, say we need to never think evil thoughts. It's not going to get you anywhere just trying to never think an evil thought. You have to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You have to be transformed in the new identity that you have. Right. But Paul himself talks all the time, right, about be aware. Be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of what's going on in your heart. Be aware. You have to be aware. We are not people who are just sleeping, just lazy, just doing whatever. No, we are aware of what is going on. Mm-hmm. So that way we know that we can steward it well, that we can direct it well. Think about like the owner of a hotel, okay? He needs to know what's going on. He needs to know if someone's not doing the laundry like they're supposed to. He needs to know who's doing a good job, who can be promoted. He needs to know those things, because if he doesn't or she doesn't, the hotel will not be able to prosper. If this person is just off doing their own thing, then they have no connection to the hotel. They have no ability to help it grow, to help it mature, to help it prosper. This person has been given authority. And so with the authority they've been given, they have to steward the hotel well. And in the same way, we have been given authority over our thoughts, over our mind, over the condition of our heart, and we need to steward it well. So we need to be aware. We need to be aware of what's going on in our heart. We need to be aware of the position of our heart. So that way we can steward it well. So that way we can grow in the exact image of God. So, love, it's not angry. It's not spiteful. It's not out for itself. It's not wishing evil on someone because they did evil to me. It's not holding any account of wrong, right? And a lot of times what happens is when people have an understanding of love, a real revelation of it, sometimes they can think, well, I'll never get there. I catch myself slipping. I catch myself getting angry. I catch myself, thinking about what's going to serve me best, whatever. They know that, this is what love looks like. This is what God looks like. And they think, I can't look like him. I can't look like that. That was Jesus, not me, right? And we know we were made in the image of God, in the exact image, the same image. We were meant to look like Jesus. Everything that Jesus looked like is what we're supposed to look like. And so sometimes I know a lot of people can think, well, that's hard. It's difficult to love people. This person is just, they just know how to rub me the wrong way. Or people will say, well, I love them, but I just don't like them, right? Just a mindset of it's hard to act in love. It's hard to love this person. And I want to encourage you, that is not the case. That does not have to be the case. We never see Jesus hanging up on that cross saying, oh, this is a hard thing. These people, I just can't believe I'm doing this for them. They're just so annoying and I sure love them, but I don't like it. Right? We never see Jesus complaining or having a hard time loving people. Never. Right? I think about the woman at the well, right? And Jesus is hungry. And if I can speak for Jesus, he was probably really hungry, like borderline hangry, right? And this woman who he's not even really supposed to talk to, like they're not supposed to be all buddy, right? And she comes and he's trying to, just be a blessing to her, encourage her with, you can have the Spirit, like you can have this. And she's asking all these sorts of questions that are probably a little silly to him. And just, and in my mind, this is one of the greatest mercies of God, because he could have been like, you know what, I'm done. Like, fine, go get your water. I've got food coming my way. Just leave, right? But he doesn't. He says, ma'am, I want to give you living water. I want to give you water that you will never have to thirst again. And it changes everything for her. It changes everything for the whole town. It changes everything for her people. It changes everything because God chose, you know what? It's easy to love her. I love her. It wasn't something he really struggled over, right? It was just a choice he made to love. And we are the same way. We are capable and equipped and more than equipped with the same Spirit that Jesus had. And that Spirit is working love, not just to us, but through us. It's working love towards people. It's working love that we don't get angry, that we don't get upset, that we don't get into thoughts of, well, this person and that person, right? It's working the act of love in us.
I think there's an aspect of it where the flesh in its root is evil, right? The heart in its root is evil because it's separate from God.
Right.
And so a lot of times it's not even necessarily, oh, I want to love this person, but it's hard. It's the flesh does not want anything to do with this person. I've heard even people mention, oh, well, I'll never forgive what they've done to me, right? That person has crossed the last line, right? And parents do it with kids, brothers do it with sisters, friends do it with friends, right? Because it's a loveless world. It's a flesh and a heart that is only evil. And so there needs to be, we've been talking about personally a better word, right? There needs to be a change because you'll never be able to love from an evil heart, from an evil flesh. And so something different needs to take place.
Well, and that's exactly it, is, we aren't condemned to living by the flesh. We have been born again. We've been born new. We've been born not into the flesh anymore, but into the Spirit, where we can look exactly like Jesus. We can operate exactly how he operated. We were born back into the exact image of the Father. Well, I want to go ahead and finish off with this verse here out of 1 John chapter 5. And we'll just go ahead and start in verse 1. It says, whoever believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God, and everyone who loves him who begot also loves him who is begotten of him. By this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments. The key that Jesus had, right, with this woman at the well, with the people, with all of us, right, when he was up on the cross, right, the only reason that he could look at them and say, wow, I just love them so much. I love them so much that it's worth it. I love them so much that I want this for them, right? The only reason he could say that is because he had fellowship with the Father. And the Gospels talk about that everywhere. You would be hard pressed to read the Gospels and not find Jesus' relationship with the Father, right? And it's exactly this, is he loved him who begot. He loved God. And so he could see God in the begotten. He could see, wow, they look just like him. They have the heart of him. They have the makings to look just like him. And it was easy to say, well, I love the begotten because I love the begot. I love the Father. So how easy it is to love the children, right? When we love, the Father is where we're from, is where we're rooted from. We have the same DNA. And so Jesus could look at the Father and then look at us, and the same love could flow from him to the Father, from him to us. It was the same love that we can love because we love him, because he loves us. Of course, that's the first step. But the next is that when we love God, when we're sold out for him, when we are just absolutely in awe, when we see him for who he really is, we see his goodness, we see his kindness, we see all the things that make us love him. We can see that in others. We can have that same perspective. And there's an order to this, absolutely. But it is just as easy to love the people around us as it is to love God. Because that's the root of loving the people around us, is we start by loving God, and then an overflow of that love goes to his people.
It's like I was saying, right? Jesus could have spoke evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had the choice to sin. He had the choice to do these things. He had a flesh, he had a heart that could have been evil, but he had a better word, right? He put something else first, and that's God, right? He put God first. He loved God. He loved his Father. And so because of that, as that verse says in 1 John 5, that evil heart, that evil flesh, that evil conscience, Jesus never gave power to. And so he was able to love, as we call them, unlovable people, because he had a better word. And so when you and I are pursuing God, loving God, after him, you will love those unlovable people. You will actually show them the very nature of God that they have never seen before. But there has to be a better word. There has to be something higher. And so let's put God first today. Let's put the Father first. Let's love God with all our heart, all our soul, and all our mind, so that we can be a light in this world. Remember, first of all, that we love him because he loves us. We love you, and have a blessed day.
Thank you again for joining us here at Christ Family Ministries. We hope you enjoyed the message you heard today. Stay connected with us as we continue to grow together in the Lord. You can find other messages on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. If you have any testimonies or questions for us, please reach out to us through our email, christfamilymin@gmail.com. Goodbye for now.